Welcome to That's Enough Out of You. I'm your host, Bill Rader, and my co-host is with me also, and that is Sean Kane. Sean, how's it going?
Billy Raids, what's happening, my man?
We're doing good today. We are doing good today. Weather's a little bit miserable out
Terrible
there.
weather.
We're safe inside. Just typical Northeast Pennsylvania April weather, just wet and cloudy and miserable, and kind of makes us makes us wish for the sun to come out, which it will soon enough. So
nothing happening up there in the rich section of town where you are, buddy. Couple blocks from me.
Section of town?
Yeah, you're up in the you're in the big time up there, buddy, on the hill.
Oh, yeah, up on the hill overlooking everybody, right?
Pretty much, buddy.
And we're doing good. And typical family stuff going on. How about you?
Same thing, buddy. Same thing.
Yeah.
Birthdays, all kind of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Never a dull moment, pal.
Never. In fact, it seems like the weekends are just kind of a 5-minute break from work, and then you're right back to it. So weekends don't seem like relaxing anymore. It's just constant.
They fly by, and it's like you're working, buddy. You're always doing something.
Always. Yep.
But I tell you, Bill, we got Lisa Peace put out a promo on her Facebook page promoting our last episode that was published, the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, she's been a great help. She always does that. And Jim D'Eugenio commented on her page. He said one of the best podcasts out there. And when I saw that, I'm like, man, that makes it feel pretty good when Jim D and Lisa Peace are out there promoting for you. And Rick Otto's been doing the same thing, Bill. He's been promoting our every time I publish an episode, he'll put it out there and promote it. And
that's great.
So it's great to have those. Don McGovern sent me an email. I don't know if you've seen it. You were copied in on it.
Yeah.
He got some information. I don't know if he wants it released, so I'm not going to say anything, but he's still digging up more information and still pounding Gianni Russo into the dirt, buddy.
Yeah, these are all great guests, and we want to have them all back as soon as possible. So,
and we got some big ones lined up, Billy.
We do.
We got some big ones we're going to be recording in the next couple of weeks.
Yep.
We don't want to announce it, but keep them coming, Billy, and things are great, buddy. And I just want to say, we're still on Patreon there. Anybody that could help us out, because the costs here of the hosting sites and stuff. Yeah, everything we get from Patreon, we just put back into business. And even if you could just give a couple bucks, you don't think it's helping. It is, because it's building our membership, Bill, and that helps get advertisers. So any of that, anybody can help on Patreon. We got the websites going, Billy. I just put an article up there on Carlos Marcello knocking out some of the myths, because we had that question last time. So right now, our highest rated articles on there are Marilyn Monroe and Alan Dulles.
Yeah. The website is that'senoughoutofyou.com. There's no punctuation or anything. It's just that'senoughoutofyou.com. Go there and you can read all of Sean's blogs. He's got a bunch of them up there. I've got some stuff in the works. It's not up there yet, but it will be. So
still waiting on your hockey episode, your hockey article.
That's coming. That's coming.
Okay, because Hopkins is waiting for that, buddy.
Oh, I know. I'm sure he's refreshing every 5 minutes, waiting for the hockey article.
Huge hockey fan.
But yeah, we've got all of our information on there, including links to our Patreon and links to the show. There's some clips for the show. I keep saying I'm going to put more clips on there, and I will one of these days when I have spare time. But it's all there. The website is kind of a nice little one-stop shop for all of our stuff. And then at some point, Sean, we're going to get some, I know people have been asking us for like merchandise and stuff like that with the logo. So we'll get that up there too. I know we're thinking about doing like stickers and t-shirts and that kind of stuff.
And we got the cups.
Yep. So we'll get that. We're going to get there. Again, it's a slow, getting your own business going is a slow process, and any help that we can get from you guys from our Patreon is much appreciated, just to kind of get us off the ground. And We're going to get, eventually we want to offer some exclusive Patreon content. Also, we're talking about that. So all that stuff is in the works. It's just, like I said, it's just kind of a slow process to get there, but we're getting there. And
continue to share the podcast, spread the word. We're all over social media, pass it on to your friends, and let's, expand our base, Billy.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just such a informative show that I think it's important that people, that we share it. I mean, if you're enjoying the show, please make sure you're telling a friend. That's really what's going to help us out the most, is word of mouth, right? Just tell people about it. Tell your friends, tell your family, hey, there's this podcast I listen to, check it out. It's called That's Enough Out of You. And these two really cool guys are the hosts, and they give a lot of good information. So make sure you do that if you could for us. That's probably the biggest thing. All right, Sean, we got a tremendous topic today. Very, very controversial figure in American history. And we're going to talk about Malcolm X today.
Well, Bill, specifically, we're going to talk about the assassination of Malcolm X. And it's another thing, Billy. Welcome to the shit show once again, buddy. It's the same thing all over again. A big load of garbage given by the government of what really happened, and the media does their part in sticking with the government official story, and it's just another shit show, buddy. So,
well, as Jesse the Body said, the official story is there to protect the officials.
Yep,
that's all it is.
So let's get into it, buddy.
Let's do it.
So the assassination of Malcolm X, February 21st, 1965, at the Outta Ballroom in New York City. Now, Bill, I'm gonna quote the great author Jim Douglas, who he wrote a piece in the book The Assassinations, which was edited by Lisa Peace and Jim DiEugenio. And Jim Douglas described this assassination as a collaboration of three entities. And he said there was three circles around Malcolm. Okay, so you had the closest circle, the inner circle in the conspiracy, which was the Nation of Islam. Okay, then you had the outer circle, which was the Bossy, which is the NYPD elite police intelligence unit. And then you had the farthest circle, hiding in the shadows like they always do, which is the U.S. intelligence agencies, specifically the FBI through the Co-Intel Pro operation that we've been talking about.
Yep.
And the CIA, of course. Okay. So this one is a little bit more complicated, Bill, and we're going to get into it. But Malcolm X basically becomes a national security threat. And we've seen this story before. And he's targeted by Co-Intel Pro, which we talked about, and in the Martin Luther King episode. It was the FBI program that was there to disrupt, discredit, and destroy groups that they felt were a national security threat, including the civil rights movement. So what the FBI did is they put an infiltrator within the Chicago headquarters of the Nation of Islam, which is they always do that. They always put an infiltrator in. And that was done to widen the division that they're already trying to create between Malcolm X and the leader of the Nation of Islam at the time, Elijah Muhammad. Okay, and this is typical, Bill, of the Co-Intel Pro. This is what they did with Martin Luther King. They did this. They would later do this with Freddie Hampton and the Black Panthers, which hopefully we'll have an episode on that later on down the road. But a typical tactic run by William Sullivan, who was the assistant director of the FBI, who ran the Co-Intel Pro operation for J. Edgar Hoover. And the FBI has been monitoring Malcolm X since 1950, Billy. Okay. And
for those people who may not be as familiar with Malcolm X, you want to give like a very, very brief, just a kind of a description of who he was prior to becoming, to being involved with the Nation of Islam.
Well, we're going to go over everything, Bill. We're going to get into a little bit of who he was, but he was, there's no other way to say it. He was an out and out radical, Bill. He was really, heavily involved in the civil rights movement. And, when he gets involved with the Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad made him, his intermediary to foreign revolutionaries. Okay.
Right.
And this is when, Bill, this is when he becomes a national security threat, because he starts to meet with third world diplomats at the UN. And, one of them was Sukarno, who we talked about in Indonesia. He met with him in Harlem. And Sukarno was already on the CIA's hit list, targeting leaders for removal at this time. So when Malcolm meets with him,
what year was that, Sean?
they've been monitored since the 50s, but we're talking now, Bill, we're talking into the 60s now, the early 60s. Okay, because Malcolm was assassinated in 65, Bill. Right. So the Co-Intel Pro starts really ramping up, in the 60s against Malcolm, but they've been watching him since 1950, Bill. Intelligence agencies, and just because he was involved in civil rights, and he was so more radical than the Martin Luther Kings, and this is what made him a threat.
Right. And for those who may not know his story, I mean, he was a criminal. He was a drug dealer, spent time in jail prior to, when he came out of jail and got involved with the Nation of Islam. Well, I guess while he was in prison, he did that. And really became a spokesperson, a lead. He was one of the top leaders of that organization.
Well, he was, and we're going to see where it started, that because of his popularity, because of his really celebrity status, this is where Elijah Muhammad started to really distrust Malcolm and really was kind of jealous of him. And the FBI sees this, Bill, and they see where they could drive a wedge between it, because they're more afraid of Malcolm than they are of Elijah Muhammad.
Mm-hmm. And Elijah Muhammad was the leader of the Nation of Islam.
Right. At the time he was.
Yes.
And the BOSSI, the Police Intelligence Unit, which they nicknamed like the little CIA, they call them, they worked hand in hand with the CIA. And they would plan an operative in Malcolm's security team. And as the FBI's Co-Intel Pro operation made the split between Malcolm and Elijah get even, they made it worse than it really was, because that was part of their plan. And the thing is, Bill, Malcolm X was an out-and-out radical. There's no doubt about that. And he started to believe that, the Nation of Islam talked a tough game with a lot of rhetoric, but far too often they were inactive. And he was starting to feel that way. So, and then you also had, like I talked about, Elijah Muhammad was kind of jealous of Malcolm's celebrity status, but it really, Bill, in 1963, November 22nd, when JFK is assassinated, Malcolm X made a statement. He said, the chickens have come home to roost after the assassination. And this is what really, really ramped up the split with Elijah Muhammad, because Elijah was furious that Malcolm would say this. And a lot of people took this the wrong way, because I think what Malcolm was talking about, Bill, is when he says chickens come home to roost, he's talking about what we talked about on this podcast, that assassination regime changing unit that Allen Dulles set up, taking out leaders all over the world, in Africa, in places, trying to do it in Indonesia, in places where Malcolm now, as intermediary to the foreign revolutionaries, was talking to these leaders and finding out what the CIA and Dulles and them guys were doing. And this is what I think he meant by that comment, Bill, is the killing machine that Dulles started came home and killed our commander-in-chief. And that's what I think Malcolm was talking about. But Elijah Muhammad and a lot of other people took that comment to mean it was something, negative toward JFK. You understand what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
So, what happens is, after that, Elijah Muhammad silences Malcolm for 90 days, and he wouldn't let him talk to the press. And the FBI sees this as a golden opportunity, Bill. So they try to turn Malcolm as an informant, actually, and he turns them down. So after he does that, the FBI really ramps up their disinformation campaign, and they start really spreading a lot of rumors, putting it in Elijah's head that Malcolm's, eventually going to try to take him out. So Elijah makes a first move, and he sanctions a hit on Malcolm X. And one of Malcolm's own officials at his mosque was ordered to wire Malcolm X's car to explode when it started. but he refused to do it, Bill. And he told Malcolm in a plot. So on March 8, 1964, Malcolm announces that he's leaving the Nation of Islam. Okay. And when he did, Bill, he took the high ground, Bill. He didn't blast Elijah Muhammad like he could have. He didn't say anything about Elijah's trying to kill him or anything that was going on. He didn't really want to split the Nation of Islam completely. What he did is he came up with a plan to kind of internationalize the civil rights movement, Bill, and kind of rename it as the human rights movement. Okay. Enlisting the support of all these African countries that he was talking to the leaders from. Okay. And the next thing he did, Bill, and this frightened the national security status, he reached out to Martin Luther King. And this actually struck fear in the heart of, the FBI, the CIA, because Martin Luther King never approved of Malcolm's stance because he was not violent, Bill. And he didn't approve a lot of the rhetoric. And so this was actually the first time and only time that they would meet was March 26, 1964. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X meet. And Bill, you could just imagine the shockwaves, from J. Edgar Hoover to Richard Helms. I mean, these guys now have ramped up their efforts against Malcolm X.
Well, let's take a step back if we could for a second, Sean, because I want to make sure people understand the differences between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. Malcolm X believed in segregation, right? He wanted separation between black people and white people. And obviously Martin Luther King did not. He believed we were all equal. We should live together. We should live as equals. And so that was a big line of demarcation between the two of them. One of the other things I wanted to mention, Sean, and I don't know if you're going to get to this, is one of the reasons why Malcolm X left the Nation of Islam is because he became kind of disillusioned with them.
Well, I did mention that, Bill. That's what I said. Like he felt that they talked a big game.
Right. But they also had a lot of beliefs, a lot of ideals that they preached, particularly Elijah Muhammad.
Right.
And one of them was, no sexual relations outside of marriage. Right. You weren't supposed to drink. You weren't supposed to smoke. And he found out that Elijah Muhammad was doing a lot of these things that he was preaching against.
And that's where the FBI really ramped it up, Bill, where they even exaggerated that even more, to kind of to spread the split make the split between Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X wider. Right.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to add a little bit of detail to that, Sean, just to give people a.
Well, no, that's important, Bill. But I think, Malcolm's once he leaves the Nation of Islam, Bill, his thinking though kind of changes, Bill.
Sure.
He starts to look at this as a whole international problem, and not just the African nations, but I think the poor white people too. Like I think his thinking changes, Bill. I think his whole idea changes, and again, like you said about Elijah Muhammad, but the FBI actually with Co-Intel Pro, they were actually sending fake letters to Elijah, accusing him of these affairs, Bill, and saying they were from Malcolm, and they weren't, Bill. But this is what the FBI does, the FBI was sending. So now Elijah, the split is becoming really bad between them, and an FBI bug, because they're bugging Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X. So an FBI bug picks up Elijah Muhammad saying Malcolm X is like a Judas at the Last Supper. Okay. And now they know, that, Elijah's going to try to take him out and they're going to try to help him. Okay. So what happens now, Bill, is Malcolm X takes his pilgrimage to Mecca. Okay. And this is where he kind of changes his thinking, Bill. This is after this trip to Mecca. He really changes, Bill. And he meets with leaders like the Nkrumah from Ghana. He goes to Egypt. Nasser's there. We talked about Kennedy's relationship with Nasser. Lebanon, Nigeria, Morocco, Algeria, which always try to fight their independence from France. So while he's over there, the BOSSI, the New York Police Intelligence, goes to work with the Co-Intel Pro, and they're hammering Malcolm's organization back at the home front. And, you know, they're what they do is there's a detective that's put on Malcolm X named Tony Yu, and he would retire, Bill, and become Richard Nixon's private investigator, and he'd be involved in Watergate. We actually never got to mention him in the episodes we did on Watergate, but Tony Yu would put an infiltrator named Gene Roberts in Malcolm X's security detail. And this is a typical tactic of Co-Intel Pro. And Roberts was fresh out of the Navy. He was recruited by Tony Yu, passes the police exam, and then he's put undercover. So all this is going on, Bill, while Malcolm is in, you know, on his trip. He's in Africa, and the CIA puts him under constant surveillance, Bill. Okay. And then when he's in Egypt, okay, he's having dinner one night, and Malcolm X gets sick and he gets rushed to the hospital. Okay. Now, Malcolm said he noticed the waiter, and he seen the waiter like almost like he was following him around. And when he got to the hospital, Bill, it was determined that Malcolm was poisoned and his stomach had to be pumped. So they tried to kill him when he was in Egypt.
Yeah.
You know, and it was Nasser's people that saved him and got him to the hospital, got his stomach pumped. But Malcolm X would say, you know, after this, he said, America's rulers see me bring more dangerous, and I feel in my bones that the plots to kill me are being hatched at high places, and the triggermen would only be doing what they're paid to do. So basically he's saying, Bill, you know, even though he knows the Nation of Islam's trying to kill him, there's other forces out there that's trying to kill him as well. And he knows they're in high places, you know, inside the US government.
And this is in 64, right, Sean?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's a memo sent to Richard Helms from J. Edgar Hoover, like he did this before. And he claiming that an informant said that extreme groups are being funded by African countries, and they're causing the recent riots in the US, and these groups are being led by Malcolm X. Now, Helms discusses this matter with President Johnson, okay, and he asks Hoover to get more information on it. Now, this was all nonsense, Bill. This was all BS from J. Edgar Hoover, instigating trouble like he does. And then back on the home front, Bill, a name that I'm sure you're familiar with, Louis Farrakhan.
Yep.
He says a quote, if we dealt with him, meaning Malcolm X, like a nation deals with a traitor, then what the hell business of it is it of yours? So you can see, Bill, the tension's getting on the home front here in America, and they're also trying to kill him overseas. And the next trip on Malcolm's plans was he was supposed to go to France, Bill. And we talked a lot about France, Bill. We talked about the OAS and how they were funded by Dulles, and they were trying to take out de Gaulle in France because de Gaulle was supportive of Algeria getting their independence from France. So when Malcolm goes to France, he's stopped at the airport on de Gaulle's orders, Bill. Okay. And he's barred from entry into the country. And he's really shocked at this because he didn't expect this from France. And he's like, what the hell is going on? Like, why would they do this? But what happened, Bill, is French intelligence, which I have to say is pretty good. De Gaulle's intelligence was always pretty good. They learned that the CIA was planning to kill Malcolm X overseas, and that they were behind the attempted poisoning in Egypt, and that they were going to kill Malcolm X in France. So de Gaulle stopped Malcolm from entering the country in order to stop the hit, Bill. Okay. And yeah, wow. So that's why he was barred entry into the country.
Yeah. And
we also know from declassified documents and stuff, Bill, we now know that Hoover was sending all of Malcolm's travel plans when he was overseas, Bill, to Richard Helms at the CIA. Okay. And to Army and Navy intelligence and Air Force counterintelligence. And they were all monitoring Malcolm's every movement overseas, Billy. So go ahead, Billy.
Can I stop you? All right. So de Gaulle refuses to let Malcolm X into the country because he learns of.
I know what you're going to say. Go ahead, though.
Well, yeah. I mean, what I'm going to say is why wouldn't he protect him? Why wouldn't he?
Well, here's the problem, Bill. De Gaulle at this point, I think de Gaulle understood that the CIA took out Kennedy. Okay, he understood that because we talked about on the question episode about the guy Sutre that was in Dallas, probably could have been one of the assassins, a member of that OAS. And de Gaulle realizes, Bill, you know, that those forces were actually all coming from Allen Dulles in the CIA. And he realized that, you know, what, you know, I don't know what you wanted him to do. Like letting him in the country, Bill, I don't think he could have, he figured he could have stopped the assassination by letting him in. And then after that, I know what you're thinking. Why didn't he inform somebody about what happened? But who could he possibly trust, Bill? Who's he going to inform? The CIA and the FBI that we know are in on it. You see what I'm saying? Now, did he reach out to any of Malcolm's people? I don't know that, Bill. I don't know, but Malcolm didn't realize what happened, so I'm thinking no. So I guess
so.
You know,
essentially, what de Gaulle is saying is, this might happen, but it's not going to happen in my country.
Yeah, that's pretty much. I know what you're saying, but I don't know the whole entire backstory of what de Gaulle actually. I don't know. Like, I don't want to put the man down and say he didn't do nothing, but just make sure it didn't happen in his country. I don't know what else he did, Bill. I don't have all that information, but I know he didn't trust, you know, the CIA, the FBI to give them that information. Did he give somebody in Malcolm's inner circle? I don't know, because I don't know if he thought maybe he couldn't trust people in his inner circle, Bill.
Yeah.
I really don't know, you know, but I know that's the reason why he, you know, prevented him from entering his country though.
Right. Okay.
So, I mean, I'll look into that more, Billy, but as far as I've never seen any documentation about what else de Gaulle actually did, you know?
Yeah.
So let's get to the actual assassination, Bill. So February 21st, 1965, Malcolm's assassinated. Okay. And there was 5 hitmen, Nation of Islam hitmen, that entered the ballroom, and security is really lax that day, Bill. It's like in all these cases, Bill. It's like the JFK thing all over again. There was only one guy, NYPD there, and there's no protection for Malcolm outside of his own inner circle. And then you have one guy distracts, creating a diversion. Okay. And it was that he was saying that somebody was picking his pocket, and then he started yelling. Then all of a sudden he throws a smoke bomb, and then 3 shooters start firing at Malcolm X, and 4 to 5 escape, Bill. Okay. And would never serve a day in jail. Eugene Roberts, the guy they put in as an infiltrator, and he would actually come to respect Malcolm, Bill. Okay. And he recognizes, you know, this is happening because he saw this a week before, Bill, the same scenario play out, and it was a dry run that this guy was pretending he's getting pickpocketed, and he started this distraction. So he sees what's happening. And again, against his orders, because he came to respect Malcolm, he's trying to stop this, but it's too late, Bill. There's nothing he could do. And one of the shooters, Thomas Harrer, is shot, and then he's beaten by the crowd, and he's caught, Bill. Now, there was one NYPD police officer stationed outside here, Bill. One. How can you tell me that's protection for a man his house was firebombed? He was constant threats of killing the man, and they have one police officer stationed?
Or I thought I had read somewhere that there were undercover cops inside.
Well, the only undercover that I'm aware of is this guy Roberts that they put in as an infiltrator. I mean, any undercover cops, Bill, was working probably for Bossy, and Bossy is really getting their, you know, they're getting their information and orders really from the CIA. Yeah. So if there was any undercover, they're probably in on the plot, Bill.
Okay. And let's also add to this, Sean, this was right in front of his wife and his kids as well.
Absolutely.
Malcolm, his family, his entire family was there, and
they're all there.
Watched him die.
And then, you know, Roberts tried to save his life, Bill. And then he would actually be bitched out by his supervisors, if you could believe that, Bill, for trying to do that. Yeah. And Hare and 2 other men were tried for the murder, Bill. But now, and you could get to this, Bill, if you want to speak on this, Norman Butler and Thomas Johnson, Hare would later say that they had nothing to do with the plot. So they were completely innocent. but they were railroaded, and all three were convicted, Bill. But here's the thing, Bill, is it drives me crazy when they say, you know, they lump Malcolm in with the other lone gunman assassinations. How can be a lone gunman if there's three men sitting in prison? I mean, what's the definition of a conspiracy, Bill? Two or more people acting together.
Right.
So you want to speak on the two, Bill, the two that were innocent?
Well, they were exonerated in 2021, I believe, and then actually were paid $26 million. I believe this was last year. But, you know, they had, obviously there were lawsuits filed against New York City.
Well, they weren't even there, Bill.
Right. Exactly. And they spent each of them spent more than 20 years in prison for a crime that they had nothing to do with. Well, I mean, at least you're right, Sean. They weren't there. Yeah.
No, they had nothing to do with this. And Hare would later say that, you know.
Right.
And then that night, Bill, they would, you know, clean up the crime scene as quick as could be. And they had a ballroom. They had a dance there, Bill, for like, it was like for George Washington or something like that. At that night, they had all these, you know, rich people come in, and they had this big ballroom dance there for George Washington, you know, right?
That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. Now, Sean, let me ask you, what do you think about, do you think that Farrakhan had anything to do with the assassination?
Oh, I probably. I mean, I think, you know, like I said, I agree with what Jim Douglas said, where the three circles of power, Bill, you know, the closest circle is the Nation of Islam. And then you have the bossy little on the outside. And then you have the CIA and the FBI in the shadows. You know, they're all out and working, and one goal, one objective, to take Malcolm out, Bill. And you got to look at the Nation of Islam kind of like, you know, the mob was used to take out Fidel Castro, you know, or the Cubans, the anti-Castro Cubans were used in the JFK assassination. You know, they're working for the CIA,
right?
You know? And this guy Roberts, who's the infiltrator, he was kind of used like Merrill McCullough was used in the Martin Luther King assassination, who was put undercover. You know, and this is how the CIA and the FBI they operated. You know, and they try to take Malcolm out in Egypt. They try to take him out in France. You know, and his association with Nasser and Sukarno and reaching out to Martin Luther King. And, you know, this is what made them a threat. And the killing machine that Dulles created, Bill, was now killing U.S. citizens. Because, you know, you got to trace this back to that killing machine that Dulles created in the regime change operation he's conducted all over the world.
Right. And it's U.S. citizens that he himself, Alan Dulles, essentially deemed to be national security threats.
That's correct.
And
that's
national
correct.
Security threat is essentially, you know, it's his definition of a national
definition.
Threat.
It's not the mafia. It's not the Ku Klux Klan. It's, you know, civil rights groups. It's women right to vote groups. You know, it's Native American historical groups. These are the groups he considered, you know, national security threats, Bill. And the one thing I want to say, Bill, the Co-Intel Pro operation, even if they use that against the mafia, I would still sit here and say that's wrong. Like, all the tactics is illegal, Bill. Everything they did in there was illegal. So even if they use that against a group that clearly is a national security threat, because the mafia is, Bill, there's no way around it. I mean, they're controlling industries like the concrete industry. They're controlling unions. I mean, they're a legitimate threat. But even if they used Co-Intel Pro against the mafia, I would still sit here and say, you know, it's not right.
And RICO was sort of like that.
RICO, I disagree, but I don't think RICO was like Co-Intel Pro, because RICO became what it became, Bill. It gave them, became the law, Bill. So it was a legal thing that connected where the bosses of the mafia, who were actually not out committing the crimes, but they were profiting from the crimes. They were directing the traffic. They would now be able to be tried by being associated with the people working for them, like the underboss and the captains and the soldiers. So in that sense, go ahead.
It also gave them more flexibility to surveil and bug places and use that against them and use their own people against them.
Again, though, Bill, they're doing it legally, though. They're getting a wiretap order from a judge. They're not illegally wiretapping people like Co-Intel Pro was. They're not sending in infiltrators to start trouble inside the mob and start wars inside the mob, which essentially is what they were doing with Nation of Islam.
Right, but they were flipping guys.
They're flipping guys, though, Bill. But I mean, they're doing it like the RICO is legal, Bill. Like the RICO allowed them to, go after the people at the top that were basically untouchable.
Right. But at the time it was controversial.
Well, I guess, you can say it's controversial.
Unconstitutional.
Well, I look at it right now. Do you really think it's unconstitutional? I mean,
not today. Considering everything that we've gone through since then, the Patriot Act and all that stuff. But no, I mean, at the time it was controversial.
I think we should do a show on Co-Intel Pro, though, Bill, like just the whole show, because like Bill, when they're sending letters to Martin Luther King saying, we're going to expose you for cheating on your wife unless you commit suicide, or they're sending letters to Elijah Muhammad saying that Malcolm's saying they're from Malcolm's threatening that, he's having affairs with his secretaries and stuff. Like all kind of that stuff, Bill, is totally different from RICO. I mean, they didn't do that against the mafia. They didn't try to start, dissension in the ranks, which would have led to war and people killed in the street. And like I said, if they used Co-Intel Pro against the mafia, I still would sit here and say that's wrong. But I think RICO, and I get what you're saying, Bill, it was controversial at the time. And I know a lot of lawyers, especially mob lawyers and defendants, and they're not going to like it. Right. But again, when I look at it, I don't think it's unconstitutional at all. Because there's no other way to get the guys at the top, Bill.
I totally agree with you. And you're right. I think we do need to do a show on Co-Intel Pro, because I don't understand. You understand it a lot better than I do. So I think that would be a good idea.
Well, to just sum it up real quick for you and the listeners, Bill, but we'll definitely do a show. But it basically used any tactic that J. Edgar Hoover felt was necessary. And he gave, William Sullivan the means to destroy these groups that he said was national security threats. So even if they had to use assassination, Bill, whatever, and, we'll do a show down the road on Freddie Hampton, Bill, and the Black Panthers, what Co-Intel Pro did to them, because they basically dismantled the Panthers. And just the entire Co-Intel Pro operation was illegal. It was totally illegal, Bill.
Yeah. All right. And for the listener who wanted us to argue more, there you go.
There we go. We'll get to that, Billy. We'll get to that later. But yeah, there's some listeners like that, Bill. But hey, I do see what you're saying, Bill. I understand, RICO was controversial at the time and stuff. But I think if you really understand Co-Intel Pro, and then you really understand RICO, they're two totally different things.
Yeah. Okay.
Totally different, Bill.
All right.
So that's it, Billy. Another, like I said, another shit show, another garbage report coming from the government. Yeah. 2 innocent people sitting in jail, and this is where we are, Bill.
And over 20 years of their lives just gone because of this. And then, of course, Malcolm X, his life was over. His kids, they had to live with that the rest of their lives, seeing their father die and living without him. Just unbelievable. And,
Bill, you got a great point up on De Gaulle, and I'll reach out to Lisa Peace and see if we could get some information on what more did De Gaulle do, because that's a great question, Bill. Did he just make sure Malcolm didn't get in his country so the assassination wouldn't happen on his soil? And then he did nothing else, because I think that's really important to see what his thinking was.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we could find the answer to that, because like I said, De Gaulle, his intelligence is really good, and a lot of stuff he wanted to keep hidden are probably still hidden. So I don't know what we'll find out about that.
It's interesting. Yeah. I'd really like to know more about that.
Definitely.
If there's information to know, I'd like to know it. Yeah.
Well, if there is, I'm sure Lisa Peace and Jim Diogenio and maybe Rick Otto, we'll get him involved, see if they know anything.
Yeah. Well,
but that's a great question, Billy.
Get them on the show and maybe have a discussion about that.
All right, buddy. Anything else before we wrap it?
No, I think we covered it. I think this was a good episode. It's one of those topics that doesn't come up all that much. I know it came up quite a bit when Spike Lee came out with his movie Malcolm X. It was a hot topic, and then as the years have gone by, it's been hit or miss, and sometimes you hear about it and then it just goes away for a long time. But we keep the conversation going because we just don't have these people anymore. We don't have anybody who is passionate. We don't have these leaders who come forward and lead and actually want to change the world. That doesn't happen anymore. And I think it's important that we keep that, we keep their memories alive. We keep talking about the ones that did.
And Bill, just one thing, you mentioned the movie. I mean, Denzel is Denzel. Everybody knows that. But the one movie that I think portrayed Malcolm the best, there's a movie, it was on Netflix, Bill. I think it was called One Night in Miami. And it was about Malcolm X, Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali, and Sam Cooke got together in a hotel room. Did you ever see that?
I never saw that, Sean. I need to watch that.
Oh, Billy, it's tremendous.
I have to watch that. I can't believe I haven't watched it yet, but I will.
Now, to me, the guy that played Malcolm in that was unbelievable. He played Malcolm spot on. And, I'm probably in a minority, but I think he played him better than Denzel did. And I think that was really
Denzel
great.
won an Academy Award, right?
I know, Bill, but I'm just telling you my opinion, buddy.
No,
I'm just telling you my opinion. I said that's why I said I'm in the minority here, Bill.
Let me hang on a second. Let me pull that up real quick.
Probably did.
Let me see. What is it? One Night in Miami, right? All right, hang on. Let me pull that up. Where did I go here?
It's really just tremendous.
Kingsley Ben-Adir.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with him.
I don't know him. I don't know what else he's been in, but
he was fantastic.
Oh, you know what? He was in a show. He's been in a couple shows that I've seen on Netflix. The OA, which is a really interesting show. It's weird, really weird. If you're interested, it's called the OA. I think it's only one season, but that's a good one. And then he's also in Peaky Blinders, which was a good show. So
I never got into Peaky Blinders. Everybody told me, because it was Irish and stuff, you should watch it. I tried watching it. I just could never get into it, buddy.
You know who's really good in Peaky Blinders is
Murphy.
What's that?
Is it Murphy in that?
Yeah, he's a Cillian Murphy, but there's a guy. I can never remember names anymore, Sean. My memory is.
Well, you're getting old, Billy.
I am old. Tom Hardy.
He played Bane, buddy.
He played Alfie Solomons in Peaky Blinders. I really think Tom Hardy is one of the best actors.
Oh, I agree with you.
He's
and I think Murphy is too, though. Hardy and Murphy are great. That's why I was surprised. Like I couldn't get into the show, Bill, but I don't know. It didn't do anything for me.
And then Paul Anderson, who plays Arthur. It's just a great. I don't know, Sean. I watched it with the subtitles. I don't know. Maybe that helped me because I couldn't understand. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to understand half of what they were saying.
Maybe I'll give it another shot.
Yeah, give it a shot. I really enjoyed it. All right, we're way off topic.
Yeah, you got off the rails, Billy.
I went off the rails this time. Yeah. All right, Sean, we're going to wrap it up. But good episode, great job. And make sure that you go to our website, that's enoughoutofyou.com. Go to our Patreon and help us out if you can. Anything is appreciated.
All right.
Sean, that's enough out of you.
Good night, everybody.
All right.